Okay, guys, I need everybody to do this with me, please. So I've still got this exact same image that's open up. I'm going to throw this guy away. I want you to still have your same image. So basically what we've gone through is the process of how you would resize your image, deal with resolution to actually ultimately print this thing out for your portfolio. It's a print. But the process for working for something online is completely different. And in online, we don't really care about resolution. What we care about is pixel dimension. That's the only thing that matters to us. So basically, it's how many pixels wide by how many pixels tall. Does that make sense to everyone? So I want to show you a trick, and it's the way that I ultimately work on this stuff. I'm going to go back in my history to when I simply opened up my image. So go ahead and just, if you could just get back to where you reopened your image. So let's just sort of start from scratch on this one. I need everybody to do this with me. I want you to go to a web browser. I'm going to hit Command New, and I want you just to go straight to my website. So my website is verser.net. And simply click on the name. It'll take you to the first of the catalog pages right here. So what you'll see in my website if you scroll across, and by the way, this does not work in Flash. The problem, how many people here, okay, website, who has a website right now? Okay, do any of you guys have anything that is Flash-based? No, you would want, if it was, you would want to change that now because again, Flash is not supported on any Apple product. You can get it on a laptop like this, but it won't work on an iPhone, it won't work on an iPad. If you're into web design or going down that road, HTML5 does pretty much everything Flash can do. People are abandoning Flash. Again, a large part of it is security reasons. This will not work in Flash, but this works in all HTML. So if you take a look at my website, if you grab the scroll bar and you run across the bottom, you'll see that there's images. There's a lot of vertical imagery in here, but I've also got horizontal images in this as well. What is the one constant that I have in this image? In this images? My height. My height is the constant that I've got in here. But I don't know what my height is. I don't know exactly what that part is. So to find out, I just want you to come over any image. I don't care what it is. I'm going to go after this, the one that's the Lord & Taylor ad. If you hold down your Control key or you do, if you're a 2-button swiper, you need a right-click mouse is what I'm trying to get you to do. Simply click on it and come down, and you want to copy this image. Then you want to go into Photoshop. And again, because you set in your preference settings, so just everybody check to make sure that they've got these. Come up to Photoshop, down to Preferences, down to General. And in General, you want to make sure that this Use Legacy New Document Interface is enabled. And then simply hit Command-N to bring up a new, just a brand new file. And in this brand new file, you will see in this drop-down menu, this is one of the things you lose with the newer version of the new dialog box. You can actually, in this drop-down menu, you can say, I want you to build a new document that is exactly the size of what's on your clipboard. And if you use this drop-down menu, you want to set this as pixels. And you can see in my case, because I'm going to write this down, that image is 569 pixels tall. You don't care what the, I'm sorry, it's not that, that's the width. It's 750 pixels tall. That's all you care about. You don't care about what the width in this is, it's just the height. Because, say what? Oh. So did everybody get this part? Are we good on this? Okay, so I'm going to hit cancel out of this guy. Yeah. When you hit what?
When I try to bring up the new payment, is there a way to change the window to look like that?
Yes, that's what I just showed you in preferences. So when you pulled up the new one, yeah, you got this awful thing.
Yeah.
Close that up, come up to Photoshop, Preferences, General, and click on this Use Legacy New Smart Interface and say OK, and then hit Command-N. And then in the drop-down, click on Clipboard. It's at the top. Go back and copy that image again. Cancel out of that. Cancel out and then come back into it. Yeah, clipboard, and it's right there. 750 is your height. You don't even have to, we're not looking to get a new document. I just want to know how big it is. So that is how you figure out the size of how big an image is. Does that sort of make sense? I want to do one more of those really quickly for the time being right here. Cancel. I've written down mine. So for my website, it's 750 pixels tall. Again, the only thing that matters is pixels. Nobody uses inches. It's all about pixel dimension on this. It's got nothing to do with PPI. It's got nothing to do with that. I want everybody to do me a favor and go to another website. Again, I'm going to hit Command New and try Distinct Artists, DISTINC Artists, and you can actually go to Chicago as well. And this dialog, so this is the website that's actually going to come up. This is where my wife's website is. And if you click on, did everybody get to Distinct Artists? Yep, click on Hair and Makeup. And scroll down to Debbie Jacks right here. You can actually view her work. And come down and you will actually see that there's images on her website as well. So I'm going to actually ask you to do the same trick here. Hover over the very first image, the one that's got sort of the feather eyelashes. Hold down the Control key, click and do this and do copy image here as well. And then the same trick. Go back into Photoshop, Command N to bring up the new dialog box. And in this case, again, make sure it's set at clipboard. And you can see the height of her images is very close to mine. It's 788 is what the height of hers would be. Again, if you take a look at hers, you could, if you needed to size something specifically to match some quadrant, you might want to copy down the exact dimensions of hers. So we'll do hers. We'll do mine is height only, and we'll do hers is both. So we'll do a 525 on hers as well. Does that sort of make sense what's going on here? All right, so then we're going to resize this image to actually do both of those. Now for web work here, I do not do a merge stamp version at the very top. I simply flatten this image. Again, you want all of this because we're going to have to use it. We're outputting this to a JPEG. A JPEG cannot have layers in it, so it's just simplest at this stage of the game. I'm not going to save the flattened version of it. I'm just doing this to build my web version of this. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so to do that, come up to the drop-down menu right here and come down and flatten your image. It just compresses everything. It's going to say, do you want to discard the hidden layers? And you can say, sure, I can discard them because they were hidden. You didn't see any of them. So we're going to build this for my image, for my website first. So in order to do that, I'm not going to crop this image. I'm going to crop it for my wife's, but I'm not going to crop mine. Let's say I just wanted this full image to do that for mine. So to do that, up to the image menu, come down to image size. In your drop-down menu here, go to pixels. And you'll notice when you go to actually pixels here that this will always stay at resample. If you uncheck the resample, you cannot select pixels. Pixels are going to, again, it's simply the content of the pixels. We can't change the number of them. We can only change the, well, in this case, we do want to change the number of them. So again, I'm going to turn resample back on and drop down my dimensions to pixels. And then on the top, the height one is the one I care about. The width is going to take care of itself because again, I've got this chain link between the two. So I'm going to change my height to 750. This would be for my website. And then I'm simply going to say OK to that. And you'll see it makes your image considerably smaller. If you double click on the hand, it will actually bring it back up to as large as it can be on this screen right here. If you double click the eyeball, it will actually set it at 100%. So again, I'm going to double click on the hand to get it back up here as big as I possibly can. So this thing has now been flattened. It's been sized right for me, and you definitely want to do the sizing first because the sizing is going to be impacted by your JPEG compression, which is where we're going to go next. So some people will actually try to do a save as at this part, and they try to get into save as. You don't want to get into any of that. In order to prep this file for my website, you come up to the File menu, down to Export, down to Save for Web Legacy. It's like everything in the world is going to be legacy. And say OK. A dialog box will open up, and in the dialog box at the top, you've got tabs. If you simply have original, it shows you your original image. If you go to optimize, it will give you what it thinks is this one compression range that we've actually got here. Mine is actually set at a medium. If you go to a 2-up, you get a side-by-side. This is the original right here, and this is the next one. And then finally, if you go to 4-up right here, which is typically where I work, you'll actually have 4 options up here. It shows you your original one, first compression, second compression, and third compression. Now, in my case, when I actually look at this, you can see that this is going to make an extremely small file. You can see that there's the sort of whole layout of this. If we look up at the top right here, the first thing that you need to make sure is in the drop-down menu that you actually have picked JPEG, that it's not a GIF or that it's not a PNG or anything else. Now, there is support now for PNG, but at this stage of the game, 99% of what's still on the web is going to be JPEG, so go ahead and select JPEG right now. In this drop-down menu, these are simply presets. This is how much compression is going to happen. If we bring this up to maximum, you will see that it changes the quality right here to 100. It also changes the quality of this setting right here also to 100 right here. And it gives you an indication of the size that exists right here. So it's going to make, my file is now going to be 132.4K, that's kilobyte, not millibyte. Megabyte on this, so it's an extremely small file. It also gives you a time, how long this thing will actually take to load at 2 megabits per second. Most of you guys right now typically are 10 times that fast. So this would actually take, if it was a tenth of that time, a fifth of a second to actually download this file size. File size matters. If your files are too big and it takes too long on your website for stuff to download, people just leave. And you see this happen in photographers' websites all the time. You click on an image or you click on a photographer's opening page, whatever, and it just, you see it starts to creep down line at a time. How long do you guys stay? No. Jose, gone in a heartbeat. Wouldn't even think of it. The minute I see that first line come in, if the whole thing hasn't loaded, I'm just gone. I don't care who it is. It doesn't matter. So at any rate, you can change these things as well. You can use this. You could actually say, okay, well, I want a quality of 95, so I'll put in a 95. And you'll see it repopulates this. If you come down to the next frame down here, let's say you really wanted to compare a 95 with a 75. You can actually have selected the next one down and simply type in 75, and it gives you all the stats. It'll allow you to compare them. You can actually zoom in on these guys. Again, your keyboard options still work here. So it's a way to actually decide how much of this you really want to compress, how hard you want to step on your image. But in my case, I'm feeling like, okay, I'll leave it at 95. 108K it's going to be incredibly fast to download. Then these other settings you actually want to enable. Progressive is not something that many people use anymore. Progressive was a way to actually do, what would happen was, instead of waiting for your entire image to load, it would load a step at a time. And the whole idea was that, well, if somebody sees it loading, they'll stay at your website longer. That's bullshit. Nobody does that anymore. So I don't bother with this. Optimize, you want to go ahead and optimize this part. Again, it's simply going to make your loading faster. Embed your color profile. You definitely want that to happen on here. And then this convert to sRGB. Those are the real important things. Those are why we are here right now in this space. You'll also get a confirmation of your image size right down here. And then simply hit the word save. And a dialog box will open it up, and it's going to offer to name this thing exactly the same thing, but it's going to add that .jpeg extension to this, which is what we want. So I'm going to actually put mine in along with everything else that I'm doing right here. I'm going into my portfolio update, but at this stage of the game, I would also add a new folder, and I would simply call this for web. So now it's just a folder sitting inside my portfolio update, and then I can go ahead and save this guy, and it has now been saved. However, you'll notice that the image that I've still got here in Photoshop is not that JPEG file. That JPEG file got saved, but it is not this. I didn't do a save as. This is still my Photoshop file. However, the problem with this is that it is a flattened version of it that's also been changed to an extremely small file. That's not what I want to then save back. This is my master file with all the retouching on it, the really big one, my smart objects and all that kind of stuff. If I were to close this thing right now, I would not save it. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay, instead, I'm going to go back in time where I flattened this image. So I'm in history. I'm going to go back to flatten. This image is still flattened, but it's been resized back up again. And now in this stage of the game here, again, I need to actually change this to fit my wife's portfolio. So again, I'm going to double click on the hand just so that I can see everything. And in this case, I don't want to just do height. I want to resize this to do both height and width, both. So again, my image is flattened up to the image menu, come down to image size. And again, the size for my wife, hers is 788 pixels tall by 525 wide. So I'm going to put in the 788 in height. And you can see that it actually, that's hysterical. By coincidence, it ends up being exactly the size of every picture in my wife's portfolio. But let's say that it wasn't. Let's say that my wife's portfolio, instead of being that 788 by 525, let's say it was 788 by 600. Make sense? So, if I go ahead and accept this part right now, it screws things up for me because I don't have the width of this. I will never get the width of that. I will never get the 600 out of this. So instead of putting in the 788, I know I'm going to have to crop something. Instead, I put in the 600 for the width. This now sets it, and now I know that I'm going to have to crop this because this is now going to make it 900 pixels tall, and I can only have 788 tall. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, so I'm going to do that part. I'm going to go ahead and say OK to this. Again, I'm going to double click on the hand to bring it back up to full size. Now there's a gazillion ways that you can go into crop, but I'm going to show you guys what I think is one of the best tricks for actually cropping to simply make this easier on us. So to do that, I'm going to go to the marquee tool. This is just a place that I typically start to do this. In the marquee tool, I'm going to change my style from normal to fixed size. And in the fixed size, I'm going to actually change this from my width, and I'm going to put this in pixels. I'm going to do 600 px. It stands for pixels by, and it's saying I've got an invalid numerical entry in here. So let's do fixed size. Let's do 600 by 788. Leave all leave pixels, inches, all that stuff out. We're just going to do a ratio. Does that make sense? What's going on here? We good on this? Again, I know I'm going to crop off the top, so I want to set my marquee tool down in the corner. So I'm going to start down low, and I'm going to then click on this guy, and that actually just selected the whole thing, because again, it's going back to inches here. So screw that. Command D to deselect and go to your crop tool. And in the crop tool, you can actually put a ratio in here. So again, I will add the ratio here. So again, I simply pick crop tool. In the drop-down menu here, you've got width and height resolution. You've got a whole bunch of other things. But we've already set the width of this guy, so all I need to do is ratio. So I'm going to sit here in ratio. I'm going to put in 600 by 788. And this is now the crop on it. If I want the crop to be full figure here, again, to actually see what's going on in here, because my crop, I don't know what this is really cropping. I don't know if I've got more image on the outside of this. If you click on this drop-down gear part, it'll actually show you. You can drop the opacity of the crop marks that are around it, and I can actually see that I've got a lot more image that's around this part. So I'm going to say OK to that. I want to lose all of this from the top. So I'm simply going to click in the middle of this and drag my image up. And now this is going to be my crop. Is this making sense to everyone? And then finally, in this case, you could delete the pixels here. It isn't going to matter because I'm not going to save any of this part. So I'm simply going to say OK to this. Hit the return key and recheck your image size. And you can see in your image size now that you are 600 by 788. And I'm going to say OK. That's exactly what I wanted. And then again, I'm going to come up to my file. I'm going to come down to export, save for web legacy. And this would be the second one that I ultimately save. Make sense to everyone? We good on this part? Okie dokie. If they are separate, indeed, you could do the canvas size. So if you've already built borders around your image and you want to keep it that way, you want it to look like it has a border around it, then I treat the canvas really as my image, not the image. So yeah, did that sort of make sense? Okay, so guys, we have gone through a big part of the stuff that I wanted to get through today. So what I'd like to talk about, I'm going to stop the recording right now, and depending on what we choose to do is where we will go from here. So let me just stop this part. Is everybody at least feeling good about getting your files prepped for both web and print? Oh, what didn't I do on all of this? What did I forget? Say what? Sharpening. I didn't sharpen that first JPEG that I made for my website. I did not sharpen. So instead, again, right here, and this guy, I'm going to convert this to a smart object first. Go up to filter, down to the Nick collection, down to output sharpener here. In my output sharpener part, again, I would change this drop-down output to display. And again, here, adaptive sharpening, again, would be something that controls the amount that you're really doing here. I'm going to go ahead and say OK to this and see what you guys think. So I'm going to zip into here, and if you feel like this is actually too strong, we can see the difference. If you click on the smart filter part right here and simply the mask of it inverted, that's what the before and the after look like. Personally, I think that that's over sharpened. And again, I'm now looking at final. This is what it's going, I'm looking at the way it's going to look on my website. So again, I would double click right on Sharpener, Nick Sharpener Pro, come right back in, and they would either drop the output sharpening here to 50%, that's probably what I would do, and say OK to that again, and see what this looks like now. Again, it's still inverted, so invert that part, go back and forth between the two. Again, I'm going to double click on the hand to actually get this at 100%. How come I've double clicked this, this is 100%, but this is not the size of my website? Why is that?
Websites have their own dimensions.
Well, websites have their own dimensions, but I've got a problem here, and it's this. If I come up here and I take a look at my image size, you can see that this is actually still resolving this at 300 pixels per inch. Is that what your screen resolution is? What's your screen resolution? Do you know? I didn't know if we went through that part at the beginning of the course or not. We did do that, right? We grabbed a ruler and we came over here and we measured out our screen. So again, the way you figure out what your screen resolution is, I'm going to hit cancel out of here really quick. You come up to the Apple menu, down to System Preferences, into Displays. In the display that you've got, this is actually, I've got two of them. One is for the projector, but this is my monitor right here. If you click on scale and hover over this, you can see that it says that and this is again a pixel dimension, it's measuring 1280 pixel by 800, that's its dimension. So it's telling me that from the left edge to the right edge, it's 1280 pixels. I would simply measure that with a ruler, and I think we remember that. Let's just call it 12 inches, because it's pretty close. Can somebody whip out a calculator really quick and divide 1280 by 12? It's going to be 106. So we'll just call it 106. Hit cancel to this. Come back into Photoshop. Hide everybody else. Up into image menu, down to image size. And again, this part's actually set. I don't want to resample this again. I'm going to uncheck, no, I guess I'm not going to uncheck that. And it's the chain link is not in between these guys right now. So let's go back to pixels. And I'm simply going to change that to 106 and say OK. And now when I double click on the magnifying glass on the hand, did it just reduce? That's what I thought it just did. So Command Z to undo that. Can tell what happens when I get in a hurry. Okay, again, back up to image menu, down to image size. And in this case, it's not going to let me change that part, so I am going to undo resample. I'm going to change this now to 106.
I think now you can click resample and it'll let you
And then it'll go back to that. Yeah, hopefully it's going to be the same pixel count.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same pixel count, but now at 106 instead, and I'll say okay to that. And now when I double click the magnifying glass, that is now at 100%, although that still looks small to me. Anyway, is this all making sense? Are there questions about this? All right. So we can close this part up. And again, this is the key part right here. When you close this, don't save it, because this is my master file. If you save it, you've got a really little baby file you can't do anything with. Okay.